Hi everyone, so today we have an analysis video of the Florida Senate race between incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson and Governor Rick Scott. For the record, the last video we did was on the Texas Senate race, and before that the Montana Senate race, and upcoming videos that will be published on the 16th of August 2018 is the Tennessee Senate race and the West Virginia Senate race. But today we're going to take a deep dive into the Florida Senate race. So we're going to start off with some polling data. We're going to take a deep dive into the polls that were taken. And then we're also going to look at some previous elections where Rick Scott was on the ballot, and then the generic ballot polling. So, and you can see currently Florida is rated as a toss-up by all the major political pundits, and the polling sure indicates this. So it's within 1.5%, and most of the margin of errors are less than 1.5%. In fact, all of them are more than 1.5%, so it could go either way. So the polling is very close between Scott and Nelson. You would give a slight edge to Scott, however. Looking at the polling in the very early days, there was in March of 2018, April and May, and then in a May poll that was taken, it narrowed down a bit, then it narrowed down a lot when it came just to 1.4 on June the 15th, and then many polls came in and showed Scott ahead, and we are where we are today with Scott 45.7% to 44.2%. So, as you can see, most of the polls showed Nelson ahead, and then as we are today, many polls now show Rick Scott leading. So, as you can see, this poll shows that in August, Rick Scott is leading by 6 points, but then in May and July, he was only leading by 4 points. And taking a look at the previous polls that were done in May and July, seems to be starting to show a bit more Scott tendencies, so this isn't too surprising. And then this poll also shows Scott ahead by 3%, and then the final poll is the Gravis poll, which is probably the most reliable, however it is the oldest. And then if you go down to the Senate race, Bill Nelson does have a 5-point lead there. So, 4-point lead there. So we're done looking at the polling data. You would give a slight edge to Rick Scott if we're basing this only off polling data. It's 1.5%. Within 2% would be a tilt. So if it was only off polling data, it would go to Rick Scott. But polling isn't the only thing we're looking at, because polling is not always too reliable. And the next thing we're looking at is the 2014 gubernatorial race between Rick Scott and Charlie Crist, the last time Scott was on the ballot. So, as you all know, 2014 was a Republican wave year. And in Florida, it was meant to be very close, and some people said that Rick Scott was going to win. Rick Scott should have won by 5 points in this race. Now, that is because he should have won by 5 points because this is a Republican wave year. They took control of the Senate. They expanded their margin in the House. They expanded their margin in the NGA. Rick Scott should have won by more than 1% in a swing state like Florida. If it was Maryland, sure, that would be great for the Republicans, even if they were able to take it close. But Florida is a center-right state, so Rick Scott should have won by much more than 1% in 2014. As you can see in 2010, again, Rick Scott winning by 1.2% in the Republican wave year of 2010, 2 years into Obama's 8-year term. Republicans took control of the House that year. Rick Scott should have won much more than 1.2%. In addition, 2014 was more of a Republican wave year, or pretty much the same as 2010. But in 2010, not many people knew who Rick Scott was. In 2014, everyone knew who Rick Scott was. So he should have expanded his margin, right? Wrong. He won by 1% this year in 2014 and 1.2% last year. And it's not like the quality of the Democratic candidate was bad anyway. So if we're only basing it off previous elections, I would say it would lean in the Democratic column. If you were to cancel out the tilt for the Republicans, it would be a toss-up to tilt. It would be pretty much a toss-up. But this is what tips the balance. This polling data and the previous elections, they're missing the incoming wave of Democrats. If polling shows that Democrats are ahead by this amount, by 47.9, almost 48% to 39.7%, they just need a little bit more to 50 and they've already won the election. So it's not necessarily looking great for the GOP. But that's not my point. My point is that if there are all these Democrats coming out that are not recognized in the polling just shows the average voter. But because Democrats are coming out like in these sort of numbers, with an 8-point lead over the Republicans, these numbers are wrong. Now, I'm not saying Nelson, therefore, is going to win by 6.5%. I'm not saying that. That's too generous to Nelson. All I'm saying is that there's going to be a wave of Democrats coming out to vote. We've seen it in the primaries. We've seen it in the special elections. And that's why I'm calling the state of Florida for Bill Nelson. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.